Hello and welcome. Today, we'll explore one of the most essential practices of the Christian faith, the prayer. But what does it mean to pray according to Jesus and the Bible? How can we align our words, thoughts, and hearts with God's will in prayer? In this video, we'll dive into biblical teachings to uncover what Jesus taught about prayer, how he exemplified it, and how the Bible guides us to approach God with confidence and humility. So, if you've ever wondered how to make your prayer life more meaningful, you're in the right place. And why pray? The purpose of prayer. Prayer is a conversation with God, a powerful way to build a relationship with Him. But it's more than simply asking for things. It's about aligning our hearts with His. Jesus teaches us that prayer is not a ritual but a relationship. In Matthew 6 verses 7-8, Jesus says, "When you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words." Here, he reminds us that prayer is about sincerity, not repetition. God knows what we need even before we ask. Prayer, therefore, is about drawing close to Him and learning to trust in His wisdom and timing. Jesus' model prayer, the Lord's Prayer. In Matthew 6 verses 9-13, Jesus provides a model for prayer that has guided Christians for centuries. Known as the Lord's Prayer, it's both simple and profound, covering the essentials of faith and devotion. Jesus begins with, "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name," teaching us to start with reverence. By calling God Father, Jesus invites us to approach God with intimacy and trust. The prayer continues, "Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." This line reminds us that prayer is about aligning with God's purpose, not imposing our own desires. By seeking God's will, we surrender control, allowing His plans to shape our lives. Jesus also includes a request for provision. "Give us today our daily bread." This shows us that it's okay to ask God for our needs. But we are encouraged to live one day at a time, trusting Him to provide for each moment. Forgiveness is also central to Jesus' prayer. He says, "Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors." This challenges us to approach God with a pure heart, free from resentment, recognizing that forgiving others is a part of following Jesus. Finally, the prayer ends with, "Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one." This acknowledges our need for God's guidance and protection, humbly recognizing that we depend on His strength to overcome the challenges of life. Jesus' own prayer life, a model of devotion. Throughout the Gospels, we see Jesus practicing prayer in a way that is deeply personal and intentional. He often withdrew to quiet places, spending time alone with God. In Luke 5 verse 16, it says, "Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." This teaches us the importance of finding solitude, away from distractions, to connect with God deeply. In one of the most profound moments of His ministry, Jesus prays in the Garden of Gethsemane before His crucifixion. In Matthew 26 verse 39, He prays, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." This prayer reveals His submission to God's will, even in the face of suffering. Jesus' honesty and surrender show us that we can bring our fears, doubts, and desires to God while ultimately trusting His wisdom. Praying with faith and persistence. One of the hallmarks of biblical prayer is faith. Jesus tells His disciples in Mark 11 verse 24, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." Faith is not about getting everything we ask for, but trusting that God hears us and knows what is best. Jesus encourages us to pray with expectation, holding on to God's promises. In Luke 18 verses 1 to 8, Jesus tells the parable of the persistent widow to illustrate the importance of persistence in prayer. The widow repeatedly pleads with a judge to grant her justice, and despite the judge's reluctance, he eventually grants her request because of her persistence. Jesus concludes, "And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones, who cry out to him day and night?" This story encourages us to keep praying, even when answers seem delayed, trusting that God is always working in our lives. Praying with humility and surrender. The Bible teaches that humility is essential in prayer. In the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, Luke 18 verses 9 to 14, Jesus contrasts two attitudes in prayer. The Pharisee prays with pride, boasting about his righteousness, while the tax collector humbly asks, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." Jesus says that the tax collector went home justified because he approached God with a humble heart. This story reminds us that God values humility in prayer. We don't come to God to prove our worth, but to receive his grace. True prayer is about acknowledging our dependence on God, recognizing our need for his mercy and guidance. Praying according to God's will. One of the keys to effective prayer is aligning our requests with God's will. In 1 John 5 verse 14, it says, "This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us." This doesn't mean we can only pray for specific things, but it does remind us to seek God's purpose in all we ask. By praying with an open heart, we learn to accept his answers, even when they differ from our expectations. Jesus emphasized this in his own prayers, often yielding to God's greater plan. We, too, can pray with confidence, knowing that God's will is ultimately for our good. The power of praying for others. The Bible encourages believers to pray for one another. James 5 verse 16 says, "Pray for each other so that you may be healed." The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Intercessory prayer allows us to stand in the gap for others, lifting their needs to God. When we pray for others, we reflect God's love and share in each other's burdens. Paul's letters in the New Testament are filled with examples of intercessory prayer. In Ephesians 1 verses 16 to 17, Paul writes, "I have not stopped giving thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers." His commitment to pray for others shows us the importance of being intentional about lifting our community in prayer. Prayer is a lifelong journey. Prayer is an invitation to experience God's presence, to draw close, and to trust him with every aspect of our lives. Jesus' teachings and example show us that prayer is both a privilege and a pathway to spiritual growth. Whether we're seeking guidance, expressing gratitude, or asking for help, prayer brings us into a deeper relationship with our Creator. If you're looking to strengthen your prayer life, remember that God is always listening. Start each day with a simple prayer, trusting that he will guide you, and let prayer become a part of who you are. Thank you for joining us in this journey through the teachings of Jesus on prayer. If this video inspired you, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe for more biblical stories and insights. Until next time, may your prayers bring you peace, strength, and a closer connection with God.